Hey, it's Grady at Twin Creek Audio, and today I have a super special guest. If you're into all things analog, tape machines, and just generally cool audio tech, then you might already know Sammy from the Sammy and the Hi8s YouTube channel. And it turned out to be more of a hangout, an audio nerd hangout than an interview. We talked about all sorts of gear, swapped stories, and just some general audio nerdery. Is that really a word, nerdery? Sounds good, whatever. So grab a coffee or whatever your preferred beverage is, sit back, and enjoy the hang. Thank you so much for being here today, Sammy. I really enjoy your YouTube channel. I think I've watched every video except for the most recent ones that I saw like the first 5 seconds, but I haven't had time to watch it yet. But I've enjoyed all your videos. So
Well, Grady, there's not a whole lot of videos to watch, unlike your channel. I haven't been able to get through them all. What do you got, like 330 videos right now or something?
something like that, yeah. But
Yeah,
I've had the channel for about 6 years now, and yeah, it's a lot of fun. I enjoy doing the videos, but it took a long time to get to the amount of subscribers I have. And I think it's because it's kind of a niche subject, the analog audio gear.
sure.
But,
The other day I remembered how I found your channel. I think I told you before I was looking about things about the Fostec, but actually the first way I found your channel was by typing in how to use my computer as a tape machine.
oh, right,
And you
right.
had videos about that, and that's how I found your videos. Because I think you're the only one I found on YouTube at the time that was like you can use your computer, your DAW, just as a tape machine and route it out to a console. Because I was too broke, and we'll probably talk about that later. This stuff gets expensive to get a real analog tape machine, and I think you can agree that sometimes the workflow is where the sound comes from. Sometimes it's not always from just the tape.
Right. It's absolutely the workflow, and you're not leaning on the technology to try and make everything the way you want it or thinking, hey, I'll just fix that later. You're actually trying to get a good performance, which really that makes it a little more honest. That's my opinion. I mean, I like the digital production methods, and I think it's really cool, all the things we can do, but there's something about the immediacy and not having to mess with software as much. And I really like that about using my analog gear. I like using the console to mix things, but that's just because that's where I came from back in the day. That's how I learned back in the 90s. We didn't have DAW software that does everything. But that
Right.
brings me to one of the things we were talking about, and I put it on the list, was you had talked about you started moving over to more analog gear because you had an issue with a Pro Tools license that that made you angry.
Yeah, some of my older videos, because I kind of got out of it for a long time, but the original videos that I made, it was out of a frustration. I think one of my first videos was about the Tascam DA-38, the
Right.
digital, it takes like the Hi8 cartridges. And I got that thing for super cheap. And the main reason was because I had bought a really nice Pro Tools full setup and had a really nice Mac computer and a sweet interface. And I had the whole thing rocking and rolling. And then one day, uh, I think Mac either automatically or I just agreed, like I just randomly clicked, yeah, I'll do the software update. And then it turned out that the update meant that Pro Tools was now obsolete and that it wasn't supported. So I had to buy the upgrade for like $300. And I think I had spent, I don't know, what did Pro Tools used to cost before it was a monthly subscription? It was like $700 or something.
Yeah.
Man, I was just like, you know what? I'm so tired of this, and dealing with computers. I'm going to make my life more difficult and switch over to using hardware. And that's kind of what started my journey. Plus, I don't know about you, Grady, but I spend a lot of my day working on a computer. So I'm already mad at computers usually by the end of the day. And I just wanted to, touch some knobs. Like right here, I've got this Yamaha MT8X that I'm working on. It's part of my series. Does it work? It doesn't work great right now, but we're going to see if we can fix it. And it's just fun. I think I just wanted to do something fun. I don't care if it sounds the best. I'm not here to like win that argument. I just think it's just more fun.
Right. And nowadays, a lot of people use the analog gear and they'll use like the Tascam 388s and things like that. And they're kind of lo-fi or at least mid-fi.
Hmm.
So that kind of aesthetic is not something that makes your project unlistenable, because a lot of people do that kind of thing on purpose, and that's kind of a sound. A lot of things are using that kind of technique to get those kind of medium-fi or lo-fi sounds. So I think that's all is just all part of the art of recording.
I want to make a joke. I want to make a joke real quick. I feel like I don't know what to do with my hands because I don't have this going here. So
Right, you need the microphone.
I'm so used to doing this all the time.
That's kind of your thing, is you have the microphone, which is cool.
And you want me to explain why real quick, kind of an offshoot?
Yeah,
So
explain. Tell us why.
let's talk about real quick how you don't have to have the best environment to do this kind of stuff. I'm actually sitting in my garage, my half of the garage. I stopped parking in here a long time ago, and I converted it kind of into my studio space because as the family grew, I kind of got kicked out of the house a little bit and had to kind of hide all this equipment somewhere. So there's no climate control down here. Here in Arkansas right now, we're getting up into the 90s, so she's getting kind of warm down here this time of the year.
Right.
But the garage doors aren't very soundproof, I'll say. So I've gotten real creative when I record down here of like, using the null point at the back, of the pattern and stuff, and just trying to isolate myself as best I can. And so when I started making videos down here originally, I was like, I would just put a mic up, probably like you do, like kind of off shot a little bit, but it sounded so noisy that I was like, you know what? I had this mic, and I was like, what would make it even funnier? And then and that was it.
I think that's cool. That's kind of a thing I noticed on your channel, is you've got the microphone with the pop filter over it and
Yeah,
everything.
it's just ridiculous, but
Oh,
it's
that's
funny.
cool. That's something that people are going to remember you by on YouTube. I don't have anything like that except for my weird clothing that I came up with about nanoseconds and stuff. That's,
Well, what
so
I love about your channel, Grady, is just how informative it is. Like, I'm real bad about not going into the details too much, and I just like how you kind of, just look at the 300 plus videos you've done on pretty much the same topic, just kind of diving into each little thing. I think that's what people ultimately want, is the information, and it's entertaining. I just like watching it, and because I can't buy some of this gear, so it's like watching someone else play with it. I guess it's like watching someone play with toys when we were kids, through the window or something. Yeah.
I can't buy any of it either. I've just been lucky, and I've had a long time, over 20 years, to collect the things I've bought and sold and kind of traded up to where I am now with a lot of analog gear. And some of that, I have the big Soundcraft console, and
Yeah.
nobody has anywhere to put those. So you can get them really inexpensive. You get it cheap. I got that thing for really not a lot of money. You see them listed online for 2 or 3 times what I paid for mine. And that's because they're hard to sell, because you can't really ship them. And they take up a lot of space. You have to have, that thing is 7.5 feet wide. And I was lucky that I had a room that it actually would fit in. Of course, getting up the stairs was another story. But there's a video about that way back on my channel about
I
moving
think I
it.
remember that one. Yeah.
Yeah. And I couldn't even film the whole thing moving it because I was involved in holding parts of it and stuff. So I kind of filmed part of it. But so yeah, I don't have the money for that stuff either, really. I've just gotten lucky, and I've spent more money than I should have on my YouTube channel. Truthfully, that was something that I did, and it sort of gave me an excuse to keep all the recording gear I have,
Sure.
and then buy other things used. And so that's why you've seen so many consoles on my channel. Some of those I've even gotten for free, and then I've donated them when I was done making videos about them. So
Yeah. I think the big thing that I want people to know, the more that I do this, is that um, don't trust those prices that you see on all the marketplaces and eBay and things like that and Reverb, because sometimes I think the value of something is what someone's willing to pay. Like, I get way better deals on Craigslist or Facebook. Of course, it gets kind of risky sometimes, but like, it's like when you're standing there in front of somebody. What, and I bet you have too. It's like I've made a kind of a few friends just by going out and finding fellow gear people who just don't need something or want to swap some stuff around. And like, I've got that video on the Tascam 80-8. I bought that in the Model 3 console from an old guy up in Pontiac, Missouri, who was an old bluegrass player, and he hadn't turned it on since '91. I think he told me it had just been sitting in his basement. And I told you this story when I first got it. It was full of dirt daubers. For our northern friends, they may not know what that is, but these like kind of little wasp-looking things. They built their little dirt nests inside of everything. But I got all that for like $500, I think. And he threw in like another tape machine, which I haven't even tested yet, and a bunch of rack gear. Nothing really fancy, but he's like, you just want all this too? And I was like, sure.
Yeah, that's how I do things too. And finding things locally, you're always going to find a better deal. When people put things on Reverb or on eBay, they're asking pretty much what the top dollar is. And a lot of times you look at those sites and they don't sell. A lot of that stuff that's priced that way, it just sits there for years and years and nobody buys it. And that, the price is one reason. Being able to, it's too far away to go pick it up if it's something large. A lot of times you'll find somebody that's cleaning out storage and they don't necessarily want any money or at least a lot of money for it, and they'll sell it cheap just to get it out of their way. So that's the cool thing about analog gear.
Yeah, the other fun thing is that half the time it doesn't seem to work.
Well, that's true.
But that's I'm not much of an electronics wizard, but that's what the internet's good for. There's a lot of forums that sometimes they're like 25 years old, and you like get some tips and you get in there with a soldering iron and a meter, and sometimes you can figure out. I found changing capacitors and power supplies has gotten me pretty far a lot of times.
Yeah, I've learned how to work on the equipment mostly myself because there really aren't very many techs that will work on this kind of gear anymore. And so, searching the internet and then just some common sense troubleshooting, things like that. My 88 had a broken reel hub and the tensions were off, but I found the manual. And so once I had the manual, I was able to look at the service manual and figure out, oh, you change the tension on the supply side by moving this little collar on this big resistor. And I actually just kind of played with that resistor setting until I got my tensions right on the 88. So it's just something you almost have to do that nowadays. If you're going to use the older analog gear, you really have to learn how to work on it yourself.
Kind of like having an old car, don't you think? Except I don't really want to fix cars, but it's kind of like that sort of feeling.
It is. It's a lot like that, and it's fun. I mean, I know a lot of people like working on old cars. For me, I mean, that's really fun, but cars are a little more difficult because they're larger. The parts are more expensive, and I like recording gear, so
yeah.
I tend to work on this stuff whenever I have a chance, if I can. And I'm not a great tech with this stuff either. I just kind of figure it out as I go. And
I think what is it? Is it Mario over on the? He's got a channel up north, I think, based on his accent, I think, and he says you'd be surprised how far a little contact cleaner will take you.
Absolutely, that's what I've done with a lot of the gear that I have is just contact cleaner. And then I don't know if you can't see it on this camera. Well, you kind of can over there. I got that Mackie 24-8. I got that for $50 over in Louisiana. I saw it on Facebook Marketplace and messaged them. I was like, really? Okay. And it came out of a church. So I went and picked it up. It has one bad channel, but otherwise it works. So, I'm happy with that.
Yeah, you can't beat that.
No, and it's serving its purpose here in this bedroom studio while I'm working on my new actual studio in the back right now. So I have the Mackie and, a couple other things. I have the MSR16 in here too.
I think a lot of times people, the best thing I've learned to do is to not get too focused on one piece of gear. Like, let's use the example again. What is it? The Tascam 338 or 388, the console and quarter-inch recorder that everybody dies for.
Right.
The Black Keys made a record on it once. And those are the ones you get online and they're like $4,000 or $5,000 now. Maybe they work. And can you imagine servicing one of those, first of all, trying to get to the tape machine?
No.
And it's only a quarter-inch. And, you can get something like the 80-8 and like a model console, or what's that console you have? It's a little newer.
It's an M35.
Yeah. So you put that in the 80-8 together, and I think you probably have a higher fidelity unit because it runs at a higher speed. You probably could get it for, I don't know, a quarter or less if you just wait for the right deal, and don't even try to get the 80-8 is what I'm saying. If you see a Fostex come up or whatever, or that's why I was like, man, in the old days, one of my first videos was like, this Tascam DA-38 is technically not digital, but it uses a tape cartridge, so it feels kind of the same, and you have to hit rewind and stuff. So, and it sounds great. So, you can get one of those for $200 to get started,
Right. I don't see that with the 388 either, because the 88 is half-inch tape, 8 tracks on half-inch tape, which
Right.
that's the same as 2-inch. The track width is the same as 2-inch 24 track, which a lot of professional stuff back in the day was done on 2-inch 24. And
Yeah.
the 388 is 8 tracks on 1/4-inch tape. So obviously with the 88 or like a Tascam 38, you're going to have a little bit higher quality because you've got wider track width. But everybody wants those 388s, and it's a hype thing, I guess. I'd personally rather have a separate console like this M35 and then the 88 to connect to it. That makes more sense to me, even though the 388s look cool and I think they sound cool from what I can tell. But I think there's a lot of that kind of gear is just overpriced due to hype.
It's like the big 4 tracks, the 424 by Tascam. It's like the gold standard. The Mark III, I think, is the one everybody wants.
Right.
I started out on a Yamaha. Well, it was kind of like this, but it was the 4TX, just the 4-channel one. That's what I started on in the 90s. And I actually at one point had both machines. It was before I did YouTube, but I actually liked the sound of my Yamaha better than the Tascam. Now that's all just opinion, and maybe my Tascam wasn't set up right or something. I don't know. But you can get one of those for like way cheaper, and just like if people would stop focusing so much on the exact gear, like I have to have this gear, it's kind of the old thing. If the song sucks, then it doesn't matter what you record it on. It's not going to sound good,
Right. That's something that I think about a lot. It's like, why do people think that you have to have certain gear in order to make a good recording? I call those people audio elitists.
Yeah.
They're like, well, if you don't have a Neve preamp or an API, well, it's just not good enough. And I also hate the term usable. You see that on forums all the time. Well, the Mackie 8 bus, it's pretty okay. It's usable, I guess.
You've got a killer setup over there. How many, is it 3-room studio technically you're going to have when it's all done? I've been kind of following the remodel.
I'll have 2-room studio, and then this bedroom is just kind of my temporary studio. And I use this for like playing guitar, just rehearsing and writing stuff. Probably edit in here too. But the other 2-room studio is in the back. It's just part of the garage building, which is funny because my old studio from all the original videos before I moved almost a year ago now, those were all in a garage apartment. And that one was set up. It had sloped ceilings and sounded really good. So I was kind of disappointed to leave that. I don't make a lot of rant style videos, and I don't make a lot of videos where it's just me talking to the camera. But lately I've been thinking about making a video specifically about this elitist attitude towards audio equipment and how you have to have a certain thing to get something that's actually releasable, but you don't, because you can release anything. You can, the Black Keys made an album on a 388, and
that's when it was not like that was considered junk back then also. Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you have good songs, good arrangements, and you have some decent technique and know how to record things, and you're in pretty good shape as far as that kind of stuff goes. That's my opinion. I don't think that it's beneficial to most of us to spend all this money to have all these high-end preamps and all this stuff that you think you need in order to make a product that's going to sound good. It's really more about your ears and the song itself, the arrangement, and whatever the source sounds like. People don't talk about that on YouTube at all. Like, oh, you got to use this mic or this preamp. It's like, no, what does the source sound like? Does your drum set sound good? Is it tuned correctly? Does the guitar or the amp sound good?
Yeah.
Really, the only thing you need to do there is just capture the sound. So if your source is good, that's probably more than half the battle. And the microphone, that probably has a little more to do with the sound than the preamp. But people go crazy over preamps. So I need a Neve preamp, or the new Behringer clone of a Neve or whatever. But you don't really need that.
I remember that brings up a good point. I remember one time I bought a really nice. I won't say the brands of these because I don't want to get blasted for it. But I bought a really nice industry preamp and a really nice compressor so I could have a good vocal chain and just roundabout, because I was recording records for people. And I remember plugging that in. And I just remember thinking like, man, not much changed. I got some cool lights. I mean, I could, and I'm not like a pro engineer, so maybe I just wasn't hearing it, but maybe that means something too. But I was like, it sounded a little bit better than my preamps on my interface, but it wasn't like, oh man, now we nailed it. I was like, maybe it, maybe it's just still the room sucks that I'm recording in, and yeah, I think I've, like you said, I've learned from analog gear is that I have to learn to get a better sound up front, because there's not much, like, take this once again because it's sitting in front of me, the Yamaha here. Only the first four channels have a high, mid, and low EQ, and there's nothing sweepable. And then the last four is just a low and high pass, like shelf. That limitation makes you like really think about, what does it sound like? Does it sound good when it's played back recorded?
Yeah, and that's your most important thing, is just, does your source sound good? Everybody,
You could be like doing an acoustic guitar, and maybe you're like, it's not trebly enough, so you just do that, and you're like, okay, now it's better.
right,
you know
right. It's changing the source or maybe changing the mic position that makes more difference than a lot of things. That stuff I learned in college when I was learning about audio engineering, is moving the mic, even moving it this much can make a difference. Okay, so we talked about subscriptions and software frustrations, and that's a really big reason why I use the things that I use.
What DAW do you use when you're on a computer?
Reaper.
Okay.
Reaper, because it's, affordably priced, and it
Yeah.
also is one of the most stable digital audio workstations that you can get. It's very, very, very stable, very solid. And I've used Reaper for like 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
Before that, I had Cakewalk and then Pro Tools up to like 7.4 Pro Tools. And I gave up on Pro Tools because it always needed to be reinstalled back then. It's like I'd be trying to use something, record with Pro Tools or open it, and then be like, oh, something went wrong. You need to go ahead and reinstall it. And after I had to do that a couple times, I said, I'm not doing this anymore. On a recommendation from someone in the industry, I switched to Reaper, and I've never switched back. So it just works, and it works on Linux, it works on Windows, it works on Mac, and the projects move without having to export them and re-import everything. And so what are you using as far as
Well, I've always been, since the Pro Tools days, back when you pretty much had, it seemed like you had to run it on a Mac to make it work good. I've just always been a Mac guy. So after I got really mad at Pro Tools and I came back to needing, I was like, well, I need some kind of DAW. I just use Logic. I bought it once. I think it was like $2.99 in the App Store, and then it's like a lifetime subscription. And there's no like. I also, and this is not. I don't like the whole subscription world that we live in. That stuff makes me crazy. But like, you buy a piece of gear once and then it's yours. That's what it feels like it should feel like. But so I bought Logic and I just refresh it, and it really annoyed me to learn it because I didn't like it at first, because I only ever used Pro Tools for like ever. But now that I've gotten used to it, it's really solid. It has really nice built in. There's a lot of free stuff, like the all the software instruments if you need something like that. It's just I think it's a good solid choice. But there's so many good cheaper DAWs. I've used Reaper once. I tried it out, demoed it. I just liked how Logic seemed to work with my Mac a little smoother, so I just made the choice. And I'm sure you can agree, sometimes the worst thing you can do is just like keep comparing things. Like, just pick something and learn it really well, and then you'll be good.
Right. That's what I had to do with Reaper, because it's a little bit complicated. And I started using it, downloaded it, and tried it. And I didn't actually switch over to that. I kept using Sonar, Cakewalk Sonar at that point for a little
Mhm.
while. And then at some point, I just started learning more about Reaper, and it had kind of a learning curve, but it worked really, really well. And now I'm really used to it. And so, I've upgraded my license for Reaper like once, but it's like $60 because I'm not making a bunch of money on recording people over here or anything. And
Sure.
they have a reasonable license scheme for Reaper, and it's just really solid. And I've used that now for at least 12 years, and I've done quite a few commercial projects, things that were released, but it's nothing big that anybody's heard of. It's like local bands and stuff like that.
I mean, the way it seems to me that like digital audio is digital audio, and all you're pretty much paying for is like a different way that the screen looks and what shape the knobs are in and
That's
where
true.
stuff is, you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
I don't know if it really, I don't know if it matters that much. Like maybe the way that they design their plugins might be different, but I'm not smart enough to even half the time hear the difference between a stock EQ and one of the really expensive ones that you have to pay for. I can hear it sometimes in reverbs. Like I think that's the only thing I've bought in the last 5 or 6 years that was a plugin was I think it's a Universal Audio reverb, and I really like it because it has a really good room and plate sound. But that's like it.
Yeah, I have the Arturia Rev Plate 140, which is like a plate reverb at EMT
Yeah, yeah,
emulation. I have that, and then I actually use a rack reverb. I still have a Yamaha Rev 500, and I use that all the time. I use that on drums constantly.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I like that. So you just need outboard reverb, or you can build a plate. Build a plate, or make a reverb chamber somewhere in your house. Find a
Yeah,
space.
you can do that. Yeah, there's a lot of different options there. I think the main thing is like if there was another rant that we could rant about is like if you get a DAW, even if you pay for it up front, like for the first few years, you shouldn't buy any plugins. Like, and you should only. I think I learned this from. I think I've told you about him. Graham Cochrane. He used to have the Recording Revolution. That was one of the first YouTube recording channels I watched years ago, and that was his whole thing. And he was a Pro Tools guy, but he's like, just use the stock because you pretty much, I think it was like you suck at recording and mixing, and if you can get good at using those, then your ears will train, and then maybe you'll even hear the pro engineers talk about the subtle differences, and that's what we're talking about is like minute stuff. And I'll leave it to the pros to know the difference between like the different kind of EQs and compressors. If you can get good at using a stock one, then you've already won most of the battle. I remember years ago reading an article. You remember when like was it Recording Magazine or something was real hot back kind of pre-internet days?
Right.
I'd go down to the bookstore or CD store and buy a copy. And I remember reading this article once in the early 2000s, and it was I don't know if it was like Butch Vig or Trent Reznor or somebody like that that was like, give me your 4 track and whatever crappy outboard gear you have, and I could probably make a record that sounds pretty good. And that always stuck with me. Like even the pro guys, like obviously they want good tools because they're reliable. It's easy to get the results that they want, but just like I think it goes back to what we were talking about. Like it's more of like the what's between your ears than the actual equipment in front of you.
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely is. And it's all, your own perspective and how you want things to sound. I have my own style when I record or mix something. I have my own particular style. And I kind of like things to sound kind of warm and vintage. Although over the last few years, I've been trying to do things that are a little bit more clean. So it's just kind of, but I have a certain aesthetic that I like with when I'm recording or mixing, and I'll kind of go for that. Luckily, my aesthetic is like if something sounds messy or it's not perfect, depending on what it is, it really doesn't matter. It's character. Um, I know the right way to get a sound, but sometimes the wrong sound can be really cool too. Something that's a little bit different or kind of odd, especially with guitar tones. Drums and vocals, things like that, are a little bit more standardized, and you need to be able to hear those a certain way. But I kind of like making things a little lo-fi at times. I definitely like things to be big and warm sounding, but there's no magic trick for that. Going back to something else we were talking about, people think if I go and get a Neve preamp that all of a sudden my stuff is going to sound like a record. It's this make it sound like a record. But that's not really that easy to do. And it's not the gear that gets you that kind of a sound. It's really more of like how you're mixing things and the layers and what you're recording and how well it's recorded. If things are recorded well, you can just push the faders up and then your mix is, 90% of the way there. And all you have to do is tweak it a little bit. That's the old school method, before we had DAWs where you could tweak every little thing and manipulate things to death in the computer. You just had to get it to sound good.
Yeah, and I think if you had to spend money on anything, it's like the one thing that would change, even with like a basic interface and like a cheap dynamic and a laptop, is if you it'd probably be smarter to build a really nice control/recording room that was like proper, you know. I think that would make the craziest difference than the preamps, because you got to remember all the pro guys are already starting in pro rooms. And you know, like I would love to turn my garage, like actually frame it out and build it into a proper room. I probably won't do that because I think my wife would kill me, but uh you know, it's like, but I know that it's not the preamps or the compressors. It's like I gotta record in a better spot, or I gotta get, if I can't sing the song, then find someone who can sing it better than me, or you know, get a better drummer. You know, it's like it's all those factors that have nothing to do with the equipment.
Right.
That's like almost like the end part.
That's true. It really is. That's very good observation. That's typically how I think about things too, is trying to have that the feel and the setup that you want and make it sound good in the room first. And
Yeah.
then if it doesn't sound that great in the room, especially like a drum set, if you don't have a great sound in the room, then use more close mics instead of room mics.
Yeah.
You know, and that way you can get around a bad sounding room, which I actually have to do that now because I'm just in a bedroom until I finish the new studio, and I just have to work at it to make it sound decent. This bedroom actually sounds okay, at least for voice tracks and stuff for YouTube, but I don't do a whole lot of recording in this room so far, just the stuff that's been in videos.
Is your new studio out in the garage? You gonna have climate control out there? You're down in Texas, so she gets hot down
Yes.
there.
It's extremely hot down here, and yeah, I have climate control in the new control room, but not in the new live room yet. That's the next one of the next projects. I just painted that room,
I
so I
saw
need
that.
to.
Yeah, yeah.
I either need one of those like a portable one or one of those. I guess they call them a portable unit with the hose that goes out the window, something like
Yeah.
that. Or I can cut a big hole in the wall and put a window unit in there. I mean, I'd like to put a split unit like I had in the old studio, but they're really expensive, and I don't make a lot of money off of my studio, you know.
Yeah.
So it's just mainly the reason I have it is for YouTube and for my own projects. So
Yeah, my studio definitely runs in the negative, but that's why it's called a hobby, right?
right, and it is. It's a hobby, and YouTube's kind of a hobby too. And in fact, that's become the primary use for my studio and everything that I do because I've recorded bands and done all this stuff for years. And I started doing YouTube, and even though it took a long time for my channel to get monetized and everything, I just kept doing it because in my life and the way I feel about it is I like making the videos. I think it's fun for me to make YouTube videos.
Uh-huh.
And I have a lot of people that have really latched on to what I'm doing on the channel. Finally, it's like it took forever for people to find me, it seems like, but I'm just trying to do kind of a service to people that are into the older analog gear, and then they want to use that with their computer. It's just fun. I just like it. It's fun to do YouTube, which I'm sure you're finding that out too. YouTube, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's just, it's I'm at an age now where I don't really want to be in a band or do any of that like I used to. And it's like, this kind of feels like the next, the next thing. And my whole thing is I just love obscure stuff. Like, and I'm really fascinated by the transition from analog to digital, which is like where the Tascam DA-38 came from. And I have this long list of deep diving the deep recesses of the internet, not the dark web, but just the things people have forgotten about. And it's like there's so much like weird, obscure digital stuff that happened in the 90s into the early 2000s, like pieces of equipment that I think if I get like some of the earliest, like say digital consoles, they were just like wacky what they were doing back then. And like before kind of the standardized stuff that we're used to now. So my hope is that I can continue to find this stuff. And the main thing is that because nobody remembers it, it's all real cheap if you can find it.
Right.
And, continue to kind of do that because there's already I think enough people out there with like a really nice professional console and a fully aligned tape machine, and they're kind of doing all that. And I think it'd be cool to eventually start recording. One of my hopes is maybe if enough bands pay attention. I mean, I wouldn't mind having some groups come in and show how you could like let's get a pro sounding, how good of a song can we record on this, like get a good band in and like and film all the steps and all the bouncing that you'd have to do, and like the final mix down and how you could do it, and just like really push these things, beyond, because everybody just thinks like demos or lo-fi, but if you really try, I think you can get a lot more out of these machines than people give them credit for.
Absolutely. I had a machine like the one that's sitting in front of you right now. I had the Tascam version of it. It
Yeah,
was the 488.
yeah,
Which is a
yeah,
set 8-track. That was my second multi-track recorder after I had a Fostex 4-track. But I did some recordings with my 488 Tascam, was the Mark One without the MIDI stuff, just
hmm
the kind of cream color looking one. And I did a recording of my band back in probably 1995 or so in a trailer house that I rented at the time.
nice, yeah,
And you can listen to that stuff today and it sounds fantastic, especially the drums, because the drummer I had at the time could play the drums. He knew how to hit the drums and he could
yeah,
tune his drums really well. And so I had the only mics was a Sennheiser 421 on the kick drum that I borrowed, and then probably an SM57 on the snare. And then I had one of those Radio Shack PZM mics, the little flat
yeah, yeah,
zone mics,
uh-huh.
taped that to the wall behind the drum kit. So I had three mics. I had the PZM, a kick and snare, and I put those down to 2 tracks on the 488. And I think I still have the cassette mix down. Of course, I didn't have any way to mix down then, so I mixed from the 488 onto a cassette.
Yeah,
But I can listen to those today, and they sound pretty good. I mean, is it
I
high
bet it's
end?
pretty huge sounded.
Yeah, and it sounded
Yeah,
great. And so
yeah,
it's still, you know, it still amazes me that I was able to get a sound. And that's when I went, oh, wait a second. The reason this sounds so good is because the drum set sounded good. It wasn't the
oh yeah,
488 and it wasn't the microphones or anything like that. It was the drummer. He knew how to hit the drums and he knew how to tune the drums. And so his kit sounded great. And then when I captured it, even with minimal miking, it just sounded amazing. I don't know. I learned a lot from my analog days. And that was before I went to college and actually learned about a lot of the ins and outs of signal flow and everything. Because back when I was in school, we were still using analog. Pro Tools
yeah,
was at version 3 back then when I was in school. It was Pro Tools 3.
yeah.
So,
Yeah, and I think one of the best things you can do is, even if you don't like fully latch on to recording in the analog world. Like, for example, I did a record for a friend of mine here in town. She had written a bunch of songs, and like I didn't have any good analog gear, and she's not really interested in that. Like, we've recorded so many years on a computer where she can just do quick punch-ins, and she doesn't want to hear me say, "Well, we're out of tracks," because she does a lot
right.
of vocals and layering and stuff. And but I just find that going back to that, like, one thing I stopped doing was over editing. Like, if it's not a good take, it's not a good take. And like cutting out every bit of background noise, like in between each part, like you really can't hear that stuff. Like I remember they released, you can get the 8-track recording, I think is it Superstition or something by Stevie Wonder. And
Mhm.
you can download the stems, and if you listen to like the horn track or whatever, it's like there's guys talking the whole time when they're not playing their instruments, and it's in the song. You know what I mean? Like they're just chit chatting about what they're going to do next. So, and getting a good recording out, and turned out to be the best record I ever did, as far as sound. And like, if you looked at the plugins on the on the DAW, it was like, it looked kind of like just spotted. It wasn't like every channel was like blocked up with 4 or 5 plugins. It was just like kind of here and there, and more like group processing. I also found that I was doing a lot of songs naturally that were like 8 to, I think the biggest tracks count we got up to was like 23 tracks on one song. You know what I mean? And it just changes the way you approach things. I think you start making more, I think you make better music just by learning the analog thing. I think a lot of we'll call them the youngins, because me and you are getting a little older and we kind of witnessed the change.
Yeah.
Imagine if you'd only ever used a computer and all you've watched are YouTube tutorials teaching you how to quantize and edit everything. um, I think learning this, it really gives you a different perspective.
Yeah, it's not music if you're just editing everything together and you're using the computer almost as a crutch because, oh, well, I can comp this together real easily with the computer, which, not that we didn't do that in the analog days. We would still comp takes together. But in those days, you had to record like 3 vocal tracks on 3 tracks on the tape machine. And then you bounce those to another track, taking the good version
Yeah.
and muting and recording them to another track to make your comp track. But it's even that seems like it's a little bit more organic in the way that you had to do that, because it's still a performance when you're like, well, I've got these 3 vocal tracks, I'm going to bounce into this one for the final, and you're performing those mutes or those fades manually rather than looking on a screen.
I think we talked about last time we talked on the phone about I hate how music has become like everything else now, or you get decision fatigue almost, because it's like whether you're going to watch TV now or trying to order food on an app, it's like there's so many dang choices. Or when you have to buy a new blender on Amazon, it's like there's 30,000 blenders, you know, whereas back in the day you'd go to the store and maybe there was 2 blenders to pick from, the not so expensive one and then the premium. And I think that that's what sucks with music is like all the different plugins, and there's like a million presets on each one. And then you've got all of us on YouTube telling you different ways that you should do this or don't do that. It's, you know, there's just so much that I feel like when you get one of like a unit in front of you or an analog console, and if you can turn your computer off and just kind of lock yourself away from all of that, you just have to make decisions with what you got, you know.
Right.
I've got a pan knob and a low and high EQ. Let's see what we can do here. And you know, I've got one compressor and a reverb rack unit. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, you can do it with that though. I mean, that's back when I
Yeah.
first started the studio that I have now. I actually started it in 2004, and I didn't have a lot of outboard gear or anything. And I was kind of, I don't know if I was dumb or smart, but at the time I had a Soundtrax Topaz console, and I had a Fostex E16 half-inch 16 track. Well, I thought, well, that's
Okay.
not
Yeah.
good
Yeah.
enough. And rather than buying more outboard gear or anything like that, I went and bought an MCI 24 track 2-inch machine, and was like, okay. And that was kind of a nightmare because those are very
You were telling me about
they're
those.
problematic. I mean,
Yeah.
they sound great. That machine, you could record stuff onto that, and it definitely made it sound like a record. And I only ever did one actual release with that machine, and then I got rid of it in about 2008. And then I went digital for, I don't know, 8 years or something, and went to using Reaper. But I always used Reaper with a console. Like in all my hybrid mixing videos, I had a console. I wanted to use a console, and so I just integrated my audio interfaces with my analog console. And so I've done a lot of that. And then I started getting back into tape machines a few years ago, and I got the MSR 16, and then I ended up with the MX70, the Otari, and then the Teac 88.
I think there's some great tools out there right now. You're talking about hybrid, and if there was one new thing I'd like to get, it's the I think that new Tascam Studio Bridge unit
Oh
that they
yeah.
came out with, the
Yeah.
24 track that you can use as an interface or just like a standalone recorder. It's like it seems like it'd be like having a 24 track tape machine without having to worry about whether it's in alignment or screwing up. And I think it just has like, what is it, like the DB25 connectors, and like that's it. It doesn't do any processing. I think tools like that are pretty amazing, and it's cool that people like at Tascam are seeing that maybe there's a market for this stuff. And like, if you had to like dive into and you didn't know anything about working analog, like get one of those. What is it, like Model 12 or Model 24? Those little consoles they sell now that
Yeah.
kind of look old school, and they even have compressors in them. The reverb's built in. There's like mastering, but you get to like push real knobs and turn real buttons. Uh, I guess you you turn the knobs. I got that backwards, but anyway,
Close
but
enough.
you don't have to worry about the tape transport on this Yamaha is eating the tapes right now. So I got to try to fix all that. You don't have to like, if you don't want a headache is what I'm saying. So you can kind of have your digital world, but like leave it a little bit and integrate with it. I think there's some just amazing options out there right now too. You know, so you don't have to go like all analog, because I think we keep saying it. It's like it's not going to make your songs better. It may change the way they sound a little bit, you know. And I had to get used to tape hiss for example. Like my first tape machine I got was after I'd been working mostly besides the cassette tape, but then I went digital for a long time and had a little reel to reel. I was like, oh, this sounds pretty bad.
Because
You
you
know
got
what I
a
mean?
lot
I
of
can
tape
see
there.
why the old school guys are like, I don't know why everybody wants tape hiss. It's awful. So unless you like that sound, you may find that, oh, I don't like how this sounds. So sometimes those standalone digital units can be real handy. There's a lot of options,
Yeah,
and
that's
mainly
the
the big thing is you don't have to spend a lot of money.
Right, that's the whole DAWless thing.
Yeah,
That's caught on really big too. It's not so much analog, but it's digital, but it's not a digital audio workstation. You're not using a computer, so it's DAWless recording. So you still have the quality of digital. You don't have the tape cost. So those are probably going to be the best option for people that are like us that want to get away from working in the box, but they don't have the money to buy analog machines or tape or anything. Because that's truthfully, I mean, I love tape and I promote that on my channel and talk a lot about tape machines. But honestly, you don't need tape to get a good analog sound. And they're
yeah,
really more trouble and more money than they're worth. Although they're really fun,
yeah,
I will say you have a Teac 88 and I have an 88 as well.
yeah,
Those
yeah,
machines they sound really, really good. They're
yeah.
very, very analog sounding, and that's without noise reduction. And I just think the 88, as far as an analog machine, yeah, it's noisy, but man, it has a very thick, very nice analog sound to it.
But I think the important thing there is that if people are watching this, that you go back. I got mine for a few $100 from an old guy up in Missouri, and you got yours for free.
Right.
Like someone asked me in the comments or said to me in a comment recently, one of my videos, like, looks like you're not talking about anything digital anymore, because all my earlier videos were like the Tascam digital multi-track recorders that ran on the Hi8 tapes, and even the channel's called Sammy and the Hi8s because that's where it all started. But I think I don't know if I even wrote in the back. I probably need to, but it was like, well, this is just what I came up with next. Like, it's not really, I'm not like looking for this piece of gear actively. It's just kind of like I randomly saw a listing and I was like, I guess I'm driving up to Missouri today to go check this out, and then next thing I knew, my wife saw a whole carload full of gear come back into the house, and I was like, oh, I had to fix a lot of it, but I'll get back into the digital ones. I was telling you that I just recently got my hands on a sweet Mackie what is it, DB8, the
Yeah.
digital bus system, their digital console with one of their Mackie 24 track digital recorders. It's over here in the corner. Um, so I think that thing's pretty fun, and it's 24 tracks and it has all the processing in it. It's like, what are those from, like the late 90s, right?
Yeah, late 90s. Yeah, I
It
think
was
they
like the
made
step after what you have after the Mackie 8 bus. They kind
yeah.
of went to these digital ones.
Yeah, I remember they were still making both. They still made the analog 8 bus like I have, and they came out with the D8B, the digital 8 bus, and they made both of them simultaneously for a while. And then they discontinued the analog 8 bus, and then I think they kept making the digital 8 bus. I've always wanted to see one of those. I've never seen one. I'm sure they're really cool.
You're gonna
Going
have to
back
come down. You're gonna have to come up here and see it one day.
I will
Yeah,
definitely will come, and you'll have to come down here and see this too, because I've got all kinds of stuff. I've got weird things that you wouldn't even imagine. There's a lot of stuff that I have here that I have never shown on the channel. I kind of intended to, but that it just kind of the way I do my videos is whatever I'm inspired to make that at that time. Because if you're making a video about something you're not really into, then it's not going to come across as well.
right.
I just kind of go on feeling like, well, I really want to make a video about this. And I have a lot of microphones that I haven't featured on the channel. I have some old electro voice microphones and things like
Yeah,
that. I've never done videos about them because I don't know, I just never got around to it. So, and I also don't know if people are going to watch videos. YouTube audiences are kind of fickle that way. They're going to watch, like when I do the analog gear videos, especially tape machines, they like those. But my digital, we were talking about vintage digital, and
yeah,
I made some videos like that, and they didn't do very well. And I'm thinking, well, why don't people want to know about the history of digital recording too? Because it's really interesting. And honestly, that gear, like your D8B and the Mackie hard disk recorder, those things sound pretty good. They made a lot of professional music on those back
yeah.
when they were current.
Well, and it's like funny to look back to it, like vintage digital. I think is a weird oxymoron that it's probably going to become more of a thing. But like it has its own OS that like you connect a monitor and a keyboard to the hard disk recorder, and then a separate OS that connects to the Mackie console, and it looks more kind of like a Doom video game than like a recording software. It's like pre DAW, and it's pretty wild. Like you can see the building blocks of how they got there, but you know, like almost that's kind of fun. It's like going back and playing on an old, like playing Doom again on an old computer or something, you know.
Right.
So and it's just it's crazy how fast everything has changed. But that thing, that console, going back to that, I got that. I actually got three consoles from this one guy for like $500, and like one of them doesn't work, but I was like, well, I'll take it just for parts. And then the other one I haven't even shown on the channel yet is like a Tascam. I think it's called a 1504 or 1508. I don't remember. It's a 24 channel 8 bus Tascam analog console, and I've got to clean it up and get it going. But like you've probably found that a lot. They're like, well, you want to take this too, you know,
Oh yeah.
and it's like they're like, you know, maybe how about another $100 and you take this one, and you
Yeah.
know, and I'm like, well, heck yeah, yeah. It's like you said, this is more of an excuse to collect gear.
It is, and that's what I started when I first started my YouTube channel. I thought, well, hey, I have all this cool recording gear. It's like maybe somebody might want to see this stuff, and that was really the start of my YouTube channel. Was hey, I have all this cool gear. It's not expensive gear necessarily, but I thought, well, maybe people might find that interesting, and so
Yeah.
that's kind of the start of the YouTube channel.
I think we joked about when we were on a call recently that in the early days, I think if you go back to the beginning of my channel, it was mainly like it was music that I was still writing and doing, and Sammy and the Hi8s was kind of like a like not really a band, but it was like a faux band sort of thing where I was playing all the instruments, and that was like the artist name. And I think I randomly made some stories about or videos about some of the gear that I had just because I thought it was cool and nobody was talking about it online. And then it was almost kind of a bummer because like they were like, you know, as far as like people were way more interested in that than like hearing about my individual stuff. And I think one of the important things to learn about, and this is anything in life, is like it's not about you, so to speak. Like um, it's fine if you like to make music, and I'm not like saying artists shouldn't be making music and stuff, but you know, I try to make videos that are things that I would want to see, you know, and like that's like you see like a lot of my videos, I really am into like old public access TV, and like in the for beginning it was like I filmed everything on VHS just because I thought that would be fun, and it was fun, but it was also very difficult to edit all those videos because I was doing it pretty much like analog video on YouTube. I was editing it all like on VCRs and like this old computer that I had, and that's what kind of got me out of it for a while. But just like I would look up pieces of gear that like don't exist anymore or were real obscure, and like nobody was making anything about it. And you know, I think you've kind of probably experienced the same thing. It's like I just make videos that I would like to like find on YouTube. So I'm like, if I'm, you know, the internet's so cool in that like there's got to be at least two other guys out there. There's your one right there on the other side of the screen that thinks this stuff's interesting. So
Yeah.
like, you know, it's worth doing, you know.
Yeah, it is. It's definitely worth doing, and it's something that's it is kind of sad though because I started out doing that too, and it's sad because the truth is nobody cares about my music. They don't care about
Yeah.
that. They
Yeah,
care
but like
about
yeah.
themselves and their music. So
Yeah, and I think if you have that attitude and like you know it's a bit of an ego hit at first, but I think it's healthy. It helps you approach life. You know, a lot of
right,
what you learn here doing gear is kind of like life, and that I like all this stuff because it breaks half the time, kind of like my life seems to. And you know, everybody wants everything to be perfect sometimes, and it's not. That's not how the real world works. And so I find that working with imperfections or like living with your mistakes, you know, analog gear is like life in that it makes you have to make decisions and stick with them. And you don't know if you made the right choice till sometimes way down the road when you hear like the final product or see how the decisions you made got you to where you are today. Uh, you know, I find that that's like that. And I feel like that's a symptom of sometimes, and I'm getting too philosophical probably, but the digital world is like we want everything to be perfect, kind of like our lives. And if you can accept that life is kind of a big mess, you know, you'll have I think, a lot more fun.
that's true. That's absolutely true. Thanks so much for talking to us today. It's been a lot of fun and very interesting.
Alrighty, hopefully I can make that trip down to Texas here
Absolutely.
sometime this year, and I'd like to mainly see a lot of that equipment you have. One of my favorite things is just trying out all this stuff. So we'll have to visit each other and do some studio tours of each other's spot. I think that'd be pretty fun to do too.
Absolutely. I think we should do that. I definitely think we should do that. I really enjoyed talking to Sammy. He's a great guy, and his presentation and his videos is really fantastic. I really enjoy watching his videos. And hopefully in the future, we're going to do some more in-person videos, visiting each other's studios, and nerding out some more. So make sure to check out Sammy's channel, Sammy and the Hi8s, as well as liking this video and subscribing to the Twin Creek Audio channel. Thanks for hanging with us, and I hope everyone out there has an excellent and wonderful day, night, evening, weekend, weekday, hour, minute, second, nanosecond. Whatever it is you're having, have a good one. Thanks for watching.